While the weekend ended poorly for the Atlanta Braves as they had a chance to clinch but couldn't get it done, overall, the weekend was a huge success, and it's now set the Braves up for a chance to clinch a postseason spot on Monday with just one win against the New York Mets. We'll recap the weekend and talk about what's happening on Monday with the Atlanta Braves, all that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're new, hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already, so that others can find us here at Locked On Braves to hopefully get geared up for a postseason run. If you're new and listening, or if you're new and listening on the audio version as well, make sure you leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. On today's episode, we're going to recap the weekend as a whole, which overall was a really good weekend for the Atlanta Braves. It ended poorly as they had a chance to clinch on Sunday, couldn't get it done, and we'll touch on that game as well, but we'll talk more about that on the postcast with me and Grant McCauley later on Sunday night. But I just want to talk about the weekend overall, and then obviously look ahead to Monday and what is on the line there, who's going to be pitching, how the Braves should put the lineup together. I think is a real discussion that needs to be had, and where Ozzie fits into that. All that on today's episode. And you can start the NFL season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, like I said, Sunday's game, the Atlanta Braves had a chance to clinch, and a really good chance to do so against a Royals team that, for all intents and purposes, wasn't playing for much. I know there was some seeding on the line on the AL wildcard part of things, whether they were going to get the 5th or 6th seed. They did play their starters the entire game, and Alec Marsh is a starter in their rotation. And I did think they threw some of their better bullpen arms. Either way, the Braves had a chance to win. They certainly were playing for something in this one, and the Royals weren't necessarily, but they came out swinging in this game and got to Charlie Morton, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But I want to start out by just talking about the weekend. Look, we came into this weekend talking about possible scenarios where the Braves could clinch, but all that seems somewhat unlikely because you were either knew you would have to sweep or you would have to hope that the Diamondbacks get swept. And sweeps are hard, even if you're playing teams who aren't playing for much, which was the case for the Padres that weren't playing for much, and the case for the Brewers who aren't playing for much. Sweeping a team is just difficult. And that's basically what it was going to take, either the Diamondbacks getting swept or the Braves sweeping the Royals. And the Braves took 2 out of 3, and they got a lot of help from the Padres, from the Brewers, who took 2 out of 3 against the Diamondbacks and the Mets, respectively. So again, I know the Braves had a great opportunity to clinch it on Sunday, and certainly wish that they would have, but they got a lot of help this weekend to put them in a good chance because of everything going perfectly on Friday and Saturday, where the Braves won and both the Diamondbacks and the Mets lost. You put yourself in a situation where you got 3 games to win 1. Now, they lost the first one of those, but you still got 2 more opportunities to clinch this thing and get into the postseason. So again, while it ended sourly, the Braves weekend overall went about as good as you could hope for. Again, the only thing that would have made it better, obviously, was the Braves getting a sweep and winning on Sunday and not having to worry about what happens in these games on Monday. Now, look, even if the Braves would have won on Sunday, you still would have had to play at least one of these games on Monday, because that would have meant something to the Mets and the Diamondbacks. So those games were going to get played either way once the Diamondbacks won. But again, you would have loved for it to not really have to mean anything for the Braves. We'll get more into those scenarios in the second segment, but I want to go back talking about the weekend. Let's start with the good. Pitching was outstanding. Look, this series was kind of the story of 2024, if you will. And fortunately, a Travis d'Arnaud walk-off home run in the 9th inning kind of changed otherwise what was a 2024 weekend, where you got great pitching and your offense just could not get it going. And it's the story of 2024 for me. But the pitching was great. The pitching was fantastic. Max Fried was just lights out on Friday, and what might be his last start in a Braves uniform certainly might be his last start in Atlanta at Truist Park. So again, that was a huge performance from him. And look, I thought Morton was the right call on some. Sorry, I'm skipping over Ronaldo, who looked great in his return on Saturday. I mean, that is a guy that I am more than comfortable giving a postseason start to now if the Braves get there. I thought he looked fantastic. The slider looked good. The fastball velocity was great. He looked like the Ronaldo Lopez we've seen all year. So that is huge news and a huge boost for this Braves team, who, again, if they get into the postseason, it's all going to be dependent on how good that pitching can be. And seeing Ronaldo Lopez pitch the way that he did on Saturday. And I know that was against a BC squad that the Royals were throwing out there after they celebrated on Friday night, after they clinched a postseason spot, but still just pure stuff from Ronaldo Lopez looked really, really good. And then on Sunday, look, I said it on the postcast Saturday night, Morton was my choice for Sunday. You got a Royals lineup that has been struggling. It's not been good offensively. I felt like it was a good enough matchup for Charlie Morton. But either way, and I say this all the time when Morton goes out there, when he pitches, you know you're going to need your offense to perform. And look, Morton wasn't great, certainly. He gave up the 3-run home run in the first inning, gave up another home run later, but that was it. And again, those runs came so early. I mean, you had 9 innings to play with to get back in this game. And I don't want to put this one on Morton, is basically what I'm trying to say. I know he wasn't great. He laid an egg. And, what, by the way, could be his last start in a Braves uniform, maybe his last start ever. I mean, there's a very good chance, if he doesn't come back to Atlanta, that he retires after this season. And it wasn't it certainly didn't go out the way that Max Fried potentially did on Friday night. But again, in my mind, this game isn't on the pitching. You only scored 2 runs against the Royals pitching staff that, again, Alec Marches has made some big starts for them. He is certainly a major league quality rotation pitcher. But the Royals used most of their good relievers yesterday. I mean, Schreiber's okay. Hernandez has been up and down this year. They didn't throw Lucas Ursig in this one, who was their closer. They tried to close it out with Bubic, who's, again, been pretty solid for them this year. The offense just didn't do enough. I mean, this is the story of the season. And I guess we'll transition from the pitching to the offense. But you scored 7 runs on the weekend. Granted, Kansas City can pitch, but they only threw Lugo for 2 innings, their second best pitcher. They scratched Cole Reagans, who is their best pitcher and probably going to start game 1 for them. And this offense just still struggled to really get much of anything going. You got a 2-run homer from Travis d'Arnaud on Friday night, and then you got Marcelo Ozuna with a stolen base and an error that scored another run. In Saturday's game, you got an error that led to a run, and then you got a Travis d'Arnaud walk-off home run. On Sunday, you got a solo shot from Gio Urshela. You got a clutch hit from Ramon Laureano. That was really the only big hit, other than obviously getting a home run from one of your 2 catchers. And there were plenty of opportunities, especially on Sunday. And again, me and Grant will talk more about Sunday's game specifically on the postcast, but just so many opportunities in that game where they just could not come through. And if the Braves don't get into the postseason, and even if they do get into the postseason and they fail to get anywhere, it's pretty much going to be because of this offense that just cannot come up with that big hit. I mean, you had 4 or 5 chances in this game on Sunday where just one big hit would either tie the ball game and give you the lead, depending on if that hits a gapper or a home run. And they just couldn't get it. I mean, opportunity after opportunity, and they could not get it. And that is the story of the year for me. When I look back at this 2024 season, again, if the Braves can't turn it around and go win a World Series, and I'm not saying they can't, but when I look back at this 2024 season, assuming that doesn't happen, the story of the year for me would be they couldn't get the big hit, because that just seems like it's the case. And look, I understand that you cannot get that big hit every time you're in one of those spots, which is why you hope throughout a game that you're putting on pressure every inning, that you're coming up in those spots every inning, because eventually you'll feel like at some point you're going to get one of those big hits. But not with this team. I mean, they could have 4 or 5 opportunities a game and not come through with a single hit. And this offense, look, the Braves just need to win 1 of 2 games to get into the postseason. If that happens, it'd be a tremendous accomplishment, because this offense has held this team back from being one of the best teams in baseball, from being a World Series favorite going into the postseason. If you could just get some level of average play offensively, this team, I think, would be considered one of the World Series favorites going in because of how good this pitching staff is. And it's the same thing all year long. They get those opportunities. They cannot find that big hit. They get a home run and it's a solo shot. It's the same thing all year long. And it's what we saw all day Sunday. We got to unfortunately talk about Ozzie Albies, how much he struggled coming back and why the Braves continue to put him in the 2 spot. But let's save that conversation for when we come back. We'll get into that and also the postseason scenarios. We'll discuss that here next. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way that you play. And if you're not quite moving on to NFL season like I'm not, although I did catch some of that Falcons win on Sunday that was exciting, but there's still a lot of MLB action left this season as well. And you can check all that out on FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen, where Sully's getting you prepped for everything happening this postseason. You can check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, kind of like I talked about last week, I don't necessarily know the schedule for the podcast here this week. Lots depending on what happens tomorrow, but we'll have plenty of coverage for you this week. I can assure you of that. No matter how this thing plays out, we will have plenty of coverage on Monday's games and whether the Braves, choked it or if they get into the postseason, previewing and getting ready for that. Hopefully that is the case. But got a lot coming your way this week on the podcast. Let's get back into the offense a little bit here. And let's have an uncomfortable conversation about Ozzie Albies. 4 for 31 since returning. He was 1 for 11 over the weekend. Twice on Sunday, he came up in a big spot facing a left-handed pitcher. Missed some fastballs middle. I'm glad that he is back. I'm glad that he is pushing through to try to help this team, but he's not helping this team. And again, I talked about it when he came back. The difference between he and Whit Merrifield defensively is huge. But then you're also not getting the offense from Ozzie. It's kind of a similar conversation we've had at shortstop where the offensive difference between Gio Urshela and Orlando Arcia wasn't as big as what I thought the gap was between those two defensively. But with the way that Gio's hit, I don't know that you can say that anymore. And again, I would have said that on the other side. I would have said that the gap between Whit and Ozzie defensively isn't big enough between what the gap is between those two guys offensively. But I don't know that you can say that anymore with the way that Ozzie was hit and the fact that he's only hitting right-handed. But again, on Sunday, you had him against a couple of lefties. Now, I know the second lefty he faced has reverse splits, and he's much better against right-handed hitters than left-handed hitters. But he's missing good pitches to hit and in clutch situations. And at the very least, he does not need to be batting second. And I've said that from day one, the very first time I saw the lineup when he returned. What are you doing putting Ozzie in the 2-hole? Especially against right-handed starters, it just makes no sense to me whatsoever. Love Ozzie Albies. I think having him back is good for the Braves. But why did you thrust him back in the 2-hole? I think that puts too much pressure on Ozzie. And I think it's unrealistic to expect a guy who's playing hurt, because if he wasn't hurt, he would be batting left-handed. And so he's only batting right-handed, something he hasn't done a lot, and you thrust him back in the 2 spot. I just don't understand it, and it can't be maintained that way. You got Michael Harris, who's getting on base, and I know he had a couple of tough games over the weekend before having a big game on Sunday, but you got Michael Harris, who's been hot, getting on base, and you got Ozzie hitting behind him, who's rolling over everything, not making good contact, and then you got Ozuna behind him, who was hitless on the weekend. He was over 10 on the weekend, so it's not ideal at the moment. And you got 2 games left and you have to win one of them. I just don't know how you can continue to put Ozzie Albies in the 2-hole of this lineup and believe that that is your best chance at scoring runs. Again, Michael Harris is getting on base. First of all, you need to run with him a little bit more, and I was glad to see him do that on Sunday. He got a stolen base to get himself in scoring position, but Ozzie can't get it done. Ozuna can't get it done. You got to figure something out. Again, your season is on the line. Put the lineup together that gives you the best chance to score. And right now, that's not with Ozzie in the 2-hole. So you got to figure that out. Again, your season is on the line. And I talked about Ozuna over 10 on the weekend. Olsen had a couple hits in the final 2 games, but you need the power back for those 2 guys. Just 2 extra base hits in their last 7 games. They've got to get it going. They've got to show some power, in these final 2 games. And as hopefully they get into the postseason, those guys have to show the power. They have to have the home runs. You got to have the doubles from Matt Olson, and that just hasn't been there over the last 7 games. And again, that needs to change. This offense it was not good over the weekend. They did enough, thankfully, because of the pitching, but the offense just continues to be the problem for this team. And again, if they don't get into the postseason, they can't win one of these games on Monday, it's probably because they couldn't score more than 3 runs in one of these games to get it done and win. And it's just unfortunate because the pitching's been really, really good. But with as crazy as this 24 season has been, what will cost the Braves on Monday? Watch the pitchers get blown up and the offense actually scores some runs. I don't think that's going to happen, but it would be so 2024. But the offense in general has just really cost the Braves this season. Now let's talk about Monday. Let's move our attention to Monday and move away from the weekend. If the Braves win one of 2 games tomorrow, they're in. I mean, that's the simple math for you right there. You win one of the next 2 games and you're in. You win the first game, the second game does not matter to you. If the Braves and Mets split, they both get in and the Diamondbacks are eliminated. And like I said, whoever wins the first game, that second game does not matter. It doesn't. If the Braves win the first game, the second game means nothing to the Mets. And now that doesn't mean the Braves just automatically win. As we've seen over the weekend, even teams who aren't playing for anything, you still got to go out there and get it done on the field. And the Mets would love to just knock the Braves out of the postseason. They're licking their chops to do that. But that is the scenario. If the Braves win the first game, they're not going to care too much about the second game. You're not going to see Chris Sale go in that second game if the Braves win the first one. So it's a bit of an odd scenario. And it's probably not one that the Diamondbacks like to see because whoever wins that first game, they're not going to be as locked in the second one. I mean, if the Mets win that first game, I can't imagine they're going to try to push Lindor in that second game, who's been had some injury scares here lately. And even in the first inning of the game on Sunday, he slid home and kind of came a little slow. Now he went on to hit a home run later in that game. But again, whatever the case may be, whoever wins that first game, they're probably going to take it a little bit easier in that second game. And so that bodes well really for both teams with the way that's played out. But again, the Braves, they would love to knock their rivals out of the postseason, keep them out, and vice versa. The Mets would love to do that to the Braves. Another interesting scenario that's played out with this situation, the Braves can only get the 5th seed. So if the Braves do get into the postseason, they're going to San Diego. And to me, that's the worst of the 2 matchups. I'd rather, go to Milwaukee. It's, not as obviously as long as a trip. And I think Milwaukee's an easier matchup because it's a young team, doesn't have a lot of postseason experience. And I think the Braves can get to them, even though the Brewers embarrassed them in Atlanta. But that was just a rare blip in the radar where Braves pitching was absolutely terrible. So again, if the Braves get in, they're going to San Diego. And you're probably going to have some night games in those wild card series on Tuesday and Wednesday and potentially Thursday. So that's what the Braves are playing for on Monday. Win one of those games and you're in. And if you are in, get ready to pack your bags and go to San Diego to face a Padres team that's been really, really good. And it's going to be a tough matchup. But again, for this team, and let me know how you feel, just getting in is a huge accomplishment. And I know you're saying that now. And if they do get in, it's, you're obviously going to be disappointed if they don't advance. But with the way this season has unfolded, this team just getting to 89, possibly 90 wins is going to be a huge accomplishment. And that Padres matchup is going to be a tough one. The Padres took 3 of 4 from the Braves here earlier in the year. The Braves went out to San Diego later in the season and took 2 of 3 from them. But it'd be a tough matchup, but it's one that I'd be more than happy to take on with the way the season has gone. If they can just get in, I don't really care who they're facing at that point. It's just an opportunity. But they have to win one of these games on Monday, and you got your 2 of your top starters ready to go in Spencer Schwellenbach and Chris Sale. The Braves have already announced what order those 2 will pitch in. We'll talk about that here next. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event, and you don't when you use Gametime. We've been talking about Gametime for a long time now, and if you're not using them, I don't know why. I use them for all the sporting events that I go to, whether it is sports, music, comedy, theater, whatever's going on around you. If you're looking for tickets, make sure that you check out Gametime. They have killer last-minute deals. The last Braves game that I went to, I was constantly checking the Gametime app because they had deals coming up all over the place, and I was waiting for that right one, and I got it. And a perfect spot to go see the Braves get a walk-off win over the Blue Jays. So make sure that you're checking out that Gametime app whenever you're looking to go to your next event. Maybe you're getting ready to go to a postseason game. Use the Gametime app. You can filter it so you get all-in prices right there, all in one screen. You get a view from your seat. It's really easy to use. So make sure you check out Gametime. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime, and make sure that you use our code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Again, download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today at last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So again, the Atlanta Braves, they've got it all in front of them. Everything is in their hands. Their season is in their hands. And with everything that has happened this year, it all comes down to this. It all comes down to 2 games in Atlanta against the New York Mets. You win 1 of 2, and you're moving on to the postseason. That's what is in front of the Atlanta Braves on Monday. You have the opportunity in front of you. Can you get it done at home against your rivals, where you've had plenty of success against them, but still, you got to get it done. And the Mets would like to erase a lot of demons and not just clinch their spot, but also knock their rivals out of the postseason as well. Now, it is going to be Spencer Schwellenbach in game 1 of this series with Chris Sale ready to go in game 2 if necessary. It's not ideal. Obviously, with Max Fried going on Friday, he would not be available for game 1 of the wild card series. And if you have to use both of these guys, and Ronaldo Lopez pitching on Saturday, wouldn't be available either. So if you do have to pitch both of these guys, it puts you in a real jam going into a wild card season. Like I said, just getting there, I would be more than happy with. But because of the way things have played out, you're going to have to use your 3 best starters in a 4-day span, and then have to turn around and play a game on Tuesday with none of them available. So it is a weird spot for the Atlanta Braves to be in, but it's a situation that they have, and it's still a good situation, I think, for the Atlanta Braves. Now, as for Schwellenbach, he faced the Mets on Tuesday. Last time he pitched, he gave up 1 earned over 7 innings on just 3 hits. Now, the baseball fan in me, the superstitious baseball fan in me, I do not like facing the same team 2 times in a row, especially when you dominated that team the first time. It feels like it never works out well. Alan Winans is not Spencer Schwellenbach, but if you remember from last year, Alan Winans went up to New York, dominated the Mets, faced them, I believe, like 10 days later it was, and the Mets just absolutely destroyed him. This is an even shorter time frame, and as good as Schwellenbach is, the Mets just saw him. And I got to imagine they're going to have a better game plan against him this time around. But Schwellenbach's been great, obviously. It's his 3rd time facing this Mets team. So like I said, it does worry me a little bit. And it's not like he had a lot of swing and misses in the start on Tuesday, just 4 strikeouts in those 7 innings. So the Mets put the ball in play against him. So it makes me a little nervous. But Spencer Schwellenbach has come up big all season. Again, the big spots against the best teams, he has come up. Can the rookie deliver one more time? That's what the Braves are going to have to hope for. You are going to have an extra day of rest built in there for Schwellenbach. But like I said, this is also basically eliminates him from the wild card series if the Braves do get in. And like I said, if they have to pitch Sale in the second game, it pretty much eliminates him too. But, these are two of the guys that you want. Like I said, if not Max Fried, then Spencer Schwellenbach is probably the next guy that you want. Although Lopez looked pretty good on Saturday, wouldn't mind him being available either. But again, you like your chances with Schwellenbach and or Sale in one of these games on Monday. On the Mets side of things, you're likely getting Severino in the first one and then Tyler McGill in the second one. Shamania threw on Friday. That's been their best pitcher, and they burned him on Friday against the Brewers, so he will not be able to pitch on Monday. So again, you're getting Severino, you're getting McGill. Now the Braves just faced Severino on Tuesday, and they got him for 4 runs on 7 hits and a walk over 4 innings, 5 strikeouts. He gave up 1 home run. And on the reverse side, what I said about a pitcher facing a team twice in a short span, how, I don't love it. That first one, you dominate them. It typically seems like it goes the other way the second time around. And the reverse of that, I feel like if a pitcher has a poor outing the first time they see him and then faces them, not too far in the future, I feel like it goes the other way. So again, I'm not feeling confident. And that's pretty much been the case for the whole second half of this season with the Braves. But again, I think it is a favorable matchup for the Atlanta Braves. They had some good at-bats against Severino last Tuesday. Hopefully that will continue. As for McGill, 4 starts in September, 20 innings, just 12 hits allowed. He has walked 7 batters, 4 earned runs allowed, and 22 strikeouts. He gave up 4 earned on 5 hits and 2 walks with 3 home runs against the Braves in a start July 27th in New York. So the Braves had some success against him earlier this year. But again, he's been throwing the ball really well in September, has some good stuff. And when he's on, McGill can be really tough to hit. So again, I love the pitchers for the Braves, obviously, in this one. I think they're going to give the offense a chance. It's just, do I trust this offense enough to score 3, 4, 5 runs to win a ball game if needed? And that's why, I said 2 weeks ago on the Mailbag podcast, when somebody asked me, do the Braves get in? I said no, because I just can't trust this offense. And if the Braves don't get in tomorrow, it's most likely going to be because the offense just couldn't score enough runs. But again, you just got to win one of these. You're asking your pitchers to be perfect, essentially, with the way the offense has been. And again, the matchups aren't terrible. Severino, McGill, certainly guys that the Braves can get to. But how much do you trust this offense to get it done? And I don't trust them a whole lot. I think if you're not able to get it done in the first game, I think what you really kind of hope in that second game is that the Mets just really aren't all that focused into it, and the Braves can take advantage of that and hopefully get an easy win. But again, you're going to have to hope that your pitching staff once again can just be utterly dominant and keep it a low-scoring game, and that your offense can just do enough to win. And that's been the story. That's been the case for 2024 since the end of April. Pitching staff has to be pretty much perfect and hope that the offense can score 3, 4 runs in order to get the win. If the Braves can do that just one time on Monday, can you do it one more time for me on Monday? They'll be into the postseason. So I hate to feel like I'm not as confident as I am going into Monday, where you do just have to win one game. But after seeing the offensive performance I saw on Sunday, it brings up everything that we've all felt in this 2024 season. This offense is going to be what ultimately lets us down. And I just don't have a lot of confidence in that group tomorrow. But hopefully, like I said, you have the recipe for how the Braves have won their games since the end of April. And that's a great starting performance from either Schwellenbach or Sale, and that the offense can do enough to get the job done. But this is what it comes down to. It is one game that you have to win out of 2 on Monday at home. Get it done, get into the postseason, and then let's see what happens. So it's going to be an exciting day. Look, the Braves have been playing postseason baseball now for a while, and it had that feeling. I had that nervous energy. I told you, going back to Tuesday in that Mets game, I had that nervous energy. I had it all over the weekend. And I'm going to have it again on Monday, where the Braves, again, as rough as this season has been, I still would love to see them get into the postseason. And I would love to see this pitching staff get an opportunity. But you got to win one of these games on Monday to make that happen. All right. Thank you all for joining me here today. Lauro, the Battery, Game Ford, War, Lee Carter, the Mass Master, Mass Booze. Thank you all for joining me here today. I appreciate you. doing that. Appreciate you joining me here live. Again, we'll be back on Monday. Obviously, a lot of content coming your way. No matter what happens on Monday, we'll have a lot of content here for you on the podcast. Make sure that you check out Locked On MLB as well. Make it your second listen of the day, solely getting you ready for the postseason. As everybody will be watching these Braves and Mets games on Monday. You can listen to those games on SiriusXM with the SXM app. Search Braves. And make sure that you subscribe to us here on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button. Follow us on social media at Shortstop Ball, at @LockedOn_Braves. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.